Well, it is about 3:30 and it's Wednesday, February 17th. My name is Jesse Starita, Public Relations and Engagement Coordinator with the Nebraska Water Center. I want to just thank everybody for joining us here again for the 2021 Spring Seminar Series. We had a great talk 2 weeks ago with Professor Anthony Schutz at our College of Law to kick things off and inaugurate the series and kind of set the stage for this year's seminars. And the theme, once again, is tributaries, race, justice, and the environment. Remember, you can watch all of the seminars on our YouTube channel to youtube.com/Nebraska Water Center. We're going to get started real quick. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Now, as much as we do miss seeing and hearing from you right now during the pandemic, please remember to mute yourself and turn off your cameras during the talk. Following the seminar, we'll open up the chat room, the chat feature for Q&A. So please do share your questions for Doug, for our speaker there. And for more information on the series in general, check out our website, watercenter.unl.edu. So to introduce our speaker, I'm going to pass the baton over to my colleague, Dr. Jesse Bell. Dr. Bell is the Claire M. Hubbard Professor of Health and Environment with the University of Nebraska Medical Center's College of Public Health. He's also a Water for Food Global Institute Faculty Fellow and Director of the newly established Water, Climate, and Health Program at UNMC. So Jesse, take it away.
Sure. First, I just want to say thank you to Doug for being here today. I'm pretty sure he's going to get sick of me inviting him to give talks at various different things around the state and around the country as well. But Doug, when it comes down to it, if you want to blame anybody, blame Doug Cluck from down in KC about setting you up with all this. And that's how that introduction actually happened. We were interested in learning more about the Keystone Pipeline and the issues that were occurring with that. And I reached out to a colleague of mine, Doug Cluck, who works at NOAA, and he's out of the regional climate office down there in Kansas City. And he told me about Doug Krogos and how if I was going to be talking to anybody, I should be talking to him. And so that's how this all came about. So definitely, Doug, just you can blame him for this. And with that, I'm going to read over Doug's bio here, and because there is quite a bit. Doug Krogos is a director of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe Department of Water Resources at Fort Yates, North Dakota. When he was 7, his family moved to Dallas, Texas, which is where Doug finished grade school and high school. Doug attended the Haskell Indian Nations University in Lawrence, Kansas for 2 years. In 1992, he enlisted in the Army, joining the 82nd Airborne Division, and served as a paratrooper for the rest of his military career. After graduating with his bachelor's in environmental science from Salish Kootenai College, Doug turned his love of nature into a career in environmental science. Currently, Doug serves as the board chairman for the Great Plains Tribal Water Alliance. The Alliance is an advisory committee to the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association, which deals with all technical and policy water resource issues of member tribal nations. The Great Plains Tribal Water Alliance also protects Native American culture and funerary items along the banks of the Missouri River and its tributaries, resulting from stream flows and lake level changes due to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers management actions along the main stem dams. So with that, I just want to pass it over to Doug, and I want to say again, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it and really look forward to your talk.
Well, thank you very much, Jess. I really appreciate that. And I would like to thank Doug Cluck from NOAA in allowing me to be a part of this developing Institute of Knowledge and bringing together some of our, I guess, inherent knowledge that I learn every day and try to bring to non-native corporations, non-native organizations like with Noah, and just work in collaboration for the same goals that we've been working for many years. It seems like I met Doug a few 5 years ago, maybe, and at that time I thought, wow, there's another Doug that has humor like myself. So he he apparently got me back, so I'm gonna have to get him back. And I think he's getting me back for talking at one of my conferences that I put on in the spring water conference that we have every year in Rapid City. And I had him come and speak, and it was kind of the last minute, and I kind of forced his hand and went over his head to his boss. So anyway, yeah, thank you, Jess, for that, and allowing for Doug to allow me to present today. So with that, I'd like to say Hamidakiapi Chante Washte Nape Chuza Palo Hemie Chinupa Wambli from Rock Creek, South Dakota. I come to you with a nice, good, healthy handshake from my heart, and to speak in front of scholars, women, men, and if there's any elders on here listening, I'd like to say forgive me for speaking in front of you for some of the cultural things I'm about to say. So I just wanted to make sure that I start with that pleasant introduction to everybody on today. So let me get started. I want to just say that I don't have a problem a lot of times speaking in front of people when it's face to face, but now with the pandemic and speaking to a computer and to a screen, it gets a little difficult. So I was a little nervous. Still am a little nervous, but I know that I'll get through it okay and fine. And then I'm really gonna enjoy the Q&A and do the best that I can. So there's a few topics that I was asked to go over today, and I'll do the best that I can. I'm not going to say that I'm not prepared, but there might be some things that I'm going to kind of go off of my head, and some of the things I'll go off of some reports that could help me familiarize everybody with the topic at hand. So one of the things we talk about is oil and gas development on tribal issues. And so one of the things that I want to just briefly go over is treaty rights. So what I want to do is I wrote something down for treaty rights that I'd just like to let everybody know, and then I'll go into that a little bit. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe, like many Indian nations, entered treaties with the United States. These treaties reserve certain lands for our permanent homelands in exchange for agreeing to not settle on much border tracts of Aboriginal territories. From the perspective of our ancestors, the purpose of the treaties was to provide a reservation where we can live in peace and maintain our culture. Treaty rights are unique to tribes. No other Americans have treaties with the United States government. This must be taken into account in federal or state approvals of pipelines or oil and gas leases. Too often, the treaties get ignored, and that generates conflict between tribes on one hand and states and federal governments on the other hand. Now, we know that when treaties were entered a long time ago, we had no ideas that we would be trying to protect leases and oil pipelines that enter near or around the Great Sioux Nation. These treaty lands that we protect started from the 1851 Fort Laramie Treaty, which had unceded land territories in almost 6 states. We know those states to be Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. These states have tributaries to the Missouri River. These tributaries were once called our where we were born, where we protected our lands. In 1868, there was another treaty with the United States that even diminished some of these 1851 treaty lands. These are still within the 5 states, but what they started narrowing down and including unceded territories of our 1868 treaty lands. And we call these the Great Sioux Reservation or the Great Sioux Nation. What we did is we wanted to protect this 1868 treaty, and with the Great Sioux Nation that's defined by the federal government, these lands were in the states of, again, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, into Nebraska, and part of Colorado. So in 1868, we still roamed, I guess, if you want to put it in so many words, this area. And this is where we hunted, gathered, fished, and protected our culture and our rights. After 1868, the government started putting us into reservations smaller than the treaty territories. I'll talk about Standing Rock. Standing Rock was put into a reservation in North and South Dakota. It's in 2 counties located in 2 states, and it's right along the Missouri River. During that time, the United States government gave water rights to tribes that were not only along the Missouri River and rivers, but also the tributaries, defining water rights to those tribes as protected and right in time. So the government gave Native tribes senior right holders to these tributaries and to we'll talk about just the Missouri River at this time. So we have a vested interest and vested rights in protecting the tributaries of the Missouri River and the Missouri River from anything that could potentially pollute or potentially affect this water and these tributaries, because today we still practice our ways and our culture using water, using the ecosystems from the water, plants, wildlife, fish, and of course we still fish and swim in these areas along the Missouri River. So we still practice our culture, and therefore we still want to protect this precious resource from, right now we're talking about oil development and gas development. And it's unfortunate sometimes to think that our government to government consultation isn't fully protected. We have government to government consultation when it comes to development. So I'll move into what government to government consultation means. The treaties established a government to government relationship between Indian nations and the United States. We refer this as nation to nation. And indeed, that is the language in President Biden's memorandum affirming consultation requirements with the tribes. The consultation requirements stem from the treaties. In our tribe's agreement, the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868, consultation is explicitly stated. Nevertheless, the government to government consultation requirements contemplates a degree of tribal input above and beyond public input or courtesy discussions with governors or states. We have the right to have a say in government actions affecting our tribes, such as pipeline approvals or oil and gas leases. Federal and state regulators routinely give short strife to the consultation requirements, and that causes conflicts with tribes. In 2019, the GAO, the report of the GAO, United States Government Accountability Office, came out with a report on tribal consultation. The report to congressional requesters. And what they found out, and this is the report, and I'm sorry I have it here, and you could go online and find it. It's about 100 and, I don't know, 28 pages. And in this consultation report that was done by the United States Government Accountability Office, it states in there, well, what they did is they went from tribe to tribe in the United States, and they held these meetings on what consultation means to the government. And the reason that, and what spawned, or what affected and started this report, was the Dakota Access Pipeline on Standing Rock, and also the Keystone XL pipeline that was going through these Aboriginal territories, these treaty lands that I had just talked about. And the tribes were coming together, asking the government, or protecting that, and asking the government, where's true consultation? And what happened with government to government, and why wasn't it afforded to the tribes? So this GAO report on tribal consultation was created in 2019. It took about a year. It started in 18, and they went all across the United States in four different areas, and they took they asked for recommendations. They asked for any knowledge. They asked for tribes to come and let them know what consultation means to them. Well, in this report, it states that they needed more information, that it wasn't enough time, and that they needed more information from tribes, and they didn't come up with a definite answer or definite definition of what requirements of government to government consultation was. And as I said earlier, government to government consultation is in our treaty rights. So some of the things in this GAO report wasn't strong enough to exhibit a true definition of what government to government consultation is. And therefore, there still isn't to this day, what is government to government consultation? What is true consultation? And so we're faced with the dilemma in Indian country, all over the United States, on when there is infrastructure, leases, pipelines, and there is a treaty right for consultation. What does that really mean? And so this report doesn't address that. And I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, because the government still doesn't know what consultation is. So that's another arm that I believe that is broken with tribes, indigenous communities, and states and government actions when it comes to infrastructure projects. Another thing I wanted to address was environmental ethics of the Lakota people. Like many tribes, the Lakota Nation has a strong environmental ethic. This can be stereotype or a cliche, but it is a truism. We have a spiritual philosophy of Bidakiwa Oasin, which means we are all related. We means all living things and all living in nature. It gives us a strong environmental ethic in our way of life. We need economic development, but we insist on balanced development. A deregulatory mindset is our belief as a Lakota people. that means what I was saying there is that we still, as I said before, provide our inherent right as Lakota people, as indigenous people, to still practice our way of life. And by doing that, we still want to be able to understand that when things are disturbed, that they're maintained or they're fixed or they're left in the pristine way in which they were found. It's almost like you take out what you take in, you bring out, you keep things as is. We still believe into that every day in our practice and our beliefs and our ways. We believe in everything's created equal, everything has a purpose, and life is always in a good way, living in a good way. I could say it in Lakota, but I'm trying to say it in English, so forgive me if I'm kind of mumbling. A lot of this that I talk about when I talk about our ethics in Lakota, I speak in Lakota, but it's hard to translate sometimes. Um, so I just want to make sure that the listeners know that in our indigenous way of life, that we always believe that when anything is going to disrupt the environment with infrastructure, that it needs to know that it needs to be put back into a pristine way of life to continue our how we live in unison or in holiness. I guess that's the best way I can say it. So one of the last things I'll talk about, and I know I'm going pretty fast, but I just wanted to make sure that I got everything, was pipeline safety concerns of Standing Rock. Standing Rock and many tribes are concerned with the lax permitting process and enforcement of pipeline safety regulations. Indian tribes and environmental justice communities, and we engage in substance hunting and fishing. Risk assessment for pipeline projects needs to account for this, but generally fail to do so. Facility response plans for oil spills that are required under the Clean Water Act tend to be ignored, and the authority and role of the tribe in emergency planning and oil spill remediations. Calculations of worst case discharge tend to minimize leak detections and shutdown times. So first responders are not always adequately prepared. Leak detection thresholds enables pipelines to continue operating during small leaks, and they can become major spills never detected by SCADA systems or any other systems. With that being said, we know that I'll talk about Dakota Access Pipeline as well as Keystone XL. They have unacceptable risks of an oil spill. Some of the design constructions and operations of these pipelines have been characterized by a failure to meet or apply minimum pipeline safety regulatory requirements and good practice consensus standards. For instance, Dakota Access Pipeline has not effectively implemented important requirements established by the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. The Dakota Access Pipeline failures include accurately formulating worst case discharge calculations. Number two, procedures for operations, maintenance, and emergency response. Three, it violates the Army Corps of Engineers easement conditions and fails a court order and an independent assessment. Five, Dakota Access Pipeline poses an imminent risk, lacking effective surge protection for the Lake Oahe crossing and backup power to the safety critical emergency shutoff valves that minimizes the spill into the lake, a recognized high consequence area. And the last, energy transfers, energy transfer, leak detections, methodology, and past performance are ineffective, which will for an ever greater spill into Lake Oahe. So we know that these are some risks that we faced with almost every single day as a nation of Standing Rock. So one of the actions that we asked Biden's administration, and I'll read off 4 of them real quick for everybody, is the Dakota Access Pipeline should immediately and permanently be shut down. The federal courts ruled that the Corps of Engineers violated the National Environmental Policy Act and Executive Order 12898 on environmental justice in approving Dakota Access Pipeline, but the pipeline remains in operation. Number 2, Dakota Access Pipeline violates numerous federal safety standards. President Biden should direct the Corps of Engineers to deny the easement and permit for the Dakota Access Pipeline and require Energy Transfer to remove the pipeline from federal lands. Number 3, the shutdown of Dakota Access Pipeline should be permanent because it contributes sustainability of increased greenhouse gas emissions. And the last one, but there are many more, but I'm just going over these 4, is Dakota Access Pipeline is operating illegally on federal lands adjoining the Standing Rock Reservation and should immediately and permanently be shut down. So these are some of the things that I'm getting to my listeners firsthand from the tribe and tribes for the new president Biden's administration on global warming, greenhouse emissions, and some of the 4 reasons why he said that he wants to help America and the United States tribes, or the tribes of the United States. One of the last things I'll talk about is that Standing Rock Sioux Tribe has a tribal emergency response committee for the Lake Oahe pipeline oil spill emergency response plan. So in January of 2020, we finally came up with a emergency response plan as a tribe, and other tribes are taking our plan, and what they're doing is asking for some of our work that we put together in our response plan. We are prepared to share this with other tribes across the Great Sioux Nation and Standing Rock. But basically, our plan is just that. It's a plan on emergency spill on Lake Oahe. And we know that working with the state of North Dakota and South Dakota Emergency Response, and also with the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, we will be charged with cooperating on emergency spills. On emergency response of spills of any nature in or around tributaries or the river or Lake Oahe, not just from Dakota Access Pipeline, but from any other pipelines that may potentially affect our livelihood or affect the tribe in general. And we also, and with that, I'd like to say that this isn't just about a native thing and tribal thing. It's about existence as a people, clean drinking water, of course, not only surface water, but also groundwater. And we know that there are a lot of straws in the Missouri River on both sides that are also non-native communities that drink from the Missouri River, being one of the biggest freshwater rivers in the world. So we want to protect that as well, and that's always going to be our mission, my mission, as long as I'm still breathing and living and kicking. So with that, I'm not sure what the time is. It looks like I might have about 15 minutes. I think I've been talking for about 20. Jess or anybody, if there might be some questions, I'd like to just go ahead and feel free to just ask me some questions from now for some Q&A. I don't know what the time check is right now.
We got plenty of time for Q&A, and I'd encourage people to jump in on the chat and share any questions that you might have that way. Should be available to everybody who's on the call. We also have our students who are in this class on the call, so it's definitely want to encourage our students to share any questions they may have for Doug. Maybe while the wheels are churning, I'll throw one out to you, Doug. With the Keystone Pipeline, I think we're, as Nebraskans, pretty familiar. If you're not familiar with that, you've been living under a rock the last 10 years as a Nebraskan. Maybe we're a little bit less familiar with Dakota Access, though I'm sure some people know a lot from the last, about 5 years ago with the protests. But one thing that I wanted to ask you was the Keystone Pipeline had so much litigation. There was so many lawsuits and things going back and forth between governmental administrations and legal teams. What's the legal status currently of Dakota Access? Is it being litigated? I mean, I know the pipeline is open and running, but where does that stand?
Right now, the pipeline is at full capacity at over 500,000 barrels a day. We, from the legal standpoint, the judge, Boasberg, the federal judge, had looked at a study that the tribe had produced and acknowledged that there are some deficiencies that that a environmental EIS, I guess, should be rendered. Um, Whereas we know that when the Trump administration came in, he said an EA, an environmental assessment, is fine, keep the flow rolling. In the meantime, Judge Brosberg asked for an EIS to be done after the Trump administration was over, and asked for the shutdown of the pipeline. Um, um, the Energy Partner Transfer, or DAPL, and the Army Corps of Engineers appealed, and the flow is still, the pipeline is still flowing. Right now, the litigation is where there's going to be a NEPA process for the EIS, and that Army Corps of Engineers and Dakota Access Pipeline are putting together an EIS as we speak. The tribe put together our own EIS, and that'll be on our website probably, within the month. We're still working on it. That EIS shows everything, kind of what I've been talking about. So the judge, Boasberg, is now was going to give a decision on the shutdown of the pipeline with an EIS in the process last week. It was extended for 60 days. So now I think it's March. Oh God, sometime in mid-March, we'll go back to court again and see what the judge renders about shutting down the pipeline during the NEPA process, or the EIS. So that's where that is right now. But what we're saying to Biden is something kind of different from the federal litigation, from the federal court. And what we're saying also as a tribe is just shut it down, because it's failed from the Pipeline Safety Administration. It doesn't have the proper shutdown procedures. The valves, there's no valves on either end of the river. There's just so many violations that it should be shut down immediately. It actually shouldn't even been, like I said earlier, it shouldn't even been considered by the Army Corps of Engineers for a permit, because it failed to produce a lot of this information that we have said since 2016. So that's where that's at right now. It's still flowing. As a matter of fact, and Dakota Access Pipeline is ramping up to double the capacity of barrels that are going through the pipeline, from 500 some thousand, 510,000 to 1.1 million barrels a day. So they're trying to ramp up, and they're putting in they're putting in what do you call those oh where you can increase the power, these powerhouses in different states, so that the pipeline production can flow a lot faster at double the capacity. Right now, that hasn't happened yet, but it's something that might happen here in the near future if we don't shut it down right away. So uh thanks for that question.
Great, thanks, Doug. Can you see the chat questions that have come in? I'll give you a chance to pull those up.
Actually, yes, I can. Okay, which one am I going to answer? Okay. Michael Hayes asked, thank you, Doug. With Standing Rock in 2 states, are there differences with how the 2 states interact with Standing Rock officials, and what challenges do they create? As a matter of fact, yeah, that's good question. Thank you very much for asking that. That is one of the issues that we have on Standing Rock, is being in 2 states. You're absolutely right. Laws are different. Tax laws are different. But when it comes to pipeline safety, that is different as well. We know that North Dakota is pro pipe fracking pipeline and oil production, because it's bringing them so much money with the Bakken. And so they're really pushing for employment of I don't want to say man camps, but employment that what brings to the economy and to the tax revenue, oil tax revenue of North Dakota. And so they're really pushing, whereas the South Dakota, they're not so much for the Dakota Access Pipeline really worried about the taxes and oil, and employment. So yeah, it's a little different from each state. But as far as Keystone XL pipeline in South Dakota, they are looking at employment and creating a lot of employment for the people to build these pipelines, man camps, water permits, things like that. So so yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of challenges that are created on being on the border of North and South Dakota. Appreciate that. I know Crystal Scott Stiles, she's on, and she's not allowed to ask me any questions. I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Doug.
Hi, Crystal.
Hi.
Nice to see your name again.
Yeah, nice to hear from you today. Great talk.
Thanks. PIC Sloan project displaces a large number of native populations. Can you please share a bit more about it? Its native communities getting any benefits from power productions of main stem dams in Missouri River? Yes, it is. So the PIC Sloan project did displace about 57,000 acres in Standing Rock. And we had to relocate people that lived along the Missouri River pre-PIC Sloan to higher ground into different communities. The government did give us 650 homes to do that. Did give us some lands that we're taking, and we're taking from our own reservations to some of these relatives that did lose their land. And and what had happened is there was a we call it the WAPA, the Western Area Power Administration, or said that we will give you credits. Actually, they said we'll give you free power. We'll give you free power from these turbines from the Western from WAPA, and in turn, you'll have credits on your power. But what had happened is it's just pennies. It's $50 for every elder on Standing Rock that gets a credit for this from these dams from the PIC Sloan. from Western Area Power Administration. So, you know, that to us is not what the promise was when the PICS loan happened back in you know, 50s. And we're still fighting, or I don't like to use the word fighting. We're still negotiating with the Western Area Power Administration on giving the tribes more power credits because of the damming and the taking of our lands through that act. So thank you for that question, Christopher. I really appreciate that. We're negotiating every year on with WAPA, getting our getting some power from damming our communities. So thank you for that question.
Doug, I don't know if you saw it, but I'll read off another question. There's two in the chat. One person asked, what problems do you foresee in negotiations/litigation with the new Biden administration?
I see it now. I'm sorry, I had to, my box is really small. The problems with negotiation and litigation with the right now, we don't really foresee any problems. I think right now the big thing with Biden is COVID relief and climate resiliency. That's one of the things that's one of our ends is environmental justice. Talking with like Gina McCarthy, for instance, we have a direct line with her. She came to Standing Rock on a few occasions. AOC has been with us. She came to the camp. So I think just getting in to the right people at the right time and allowing them to understand that Biden has the opportunity to enact an executive order to shut the pipeline down during an EIS. And because of some of these issues with the Pipeline Safety Administration, that it's unsafe right now as is. So I think it might be just a little bit of time, and we just have to find the right people with at Biden administration in order to get it to Mr. Biden or to President Biden. So I'm really how would you say it? I'm really excited that there's an open dialogue with President Biden and Standing Rock right now as we speak. As a matter of fact, just last Friday, we were on a call with President Biden and his administration about exactly what I just read to you guys today. So good question. Thank you, Bryce, for that.
Greetings, Doug. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll put my face on too. You can see me too. Greetings.
Hey, Christopher, how you doing?
I'm still alive somehow. I have a question regarding, you don't like the word fight, but fighting the good fight that you have. Ideally, it would have happened a different way, and it would have dialogue would have been much better. But my question is, with this turmoil that's developed, how are you preparing future generations, both indigenous and non-indigenous, so that this doesn't happen? I know you're doing it right now politically through the legal system, but how are you educating the youth of tomorrow, both indigenous and non-indigenous, so that this doesn't happen again, or this doesn't happen this way again?
Thanks, Christopher, for that question. It's a very, very good question, and I think you must be part Native yourself, thinking the way of our relatives. Looking at the next generations, the 7 generations, like our forefathers, Tatanka Iotika or Sitting Bull did, by creating policies with the state and with the government on how indigenous people protect their lands, protect their environment, and protect their resources. One of the things that we're also doing is grants with resiliency grants, grants that we share with other tribes, as working with the with NOAA, for instance, working with the University of Nebraska. What we are doing is we're um, uh, looking at the aspects of climate change. For what was climate, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, today, and then what's the projection of climate change, and how can we protect our communities and look at resiliency and for the future of our people. So, what do we need to do, and how do we need to enact that? So policies are one way that the government, our tribal government, are looking at and changing some laws, changing some of the ways that we need to think about the environment and our tribal issues. Looking at things like greenhouse effects, rubbish, or landfills. Right now, we're doing some things with our landfills that are creating green energy. We're doing some things with wind power and things like that. So I think policies that are being changed and enacted here at the tribal level is really going to help our future of our next couple of generations. But more than that too is looking at what kind of science behind a lot of these changes do we need. What is the science with for instance, Doug Cluck and NOAA? They're looking at different gauges and different activities that they use in order to predict climate and global warming, or predict different aspects of what to look for in the future. And then how can we protect our lands and our water and our way of life with that. So good question, Christopher. Thank you very much for that. I hope that answered it. And we pray a lot. Good, man. I got one more message. Did the pipeline project carry out and pass the environmental impact assessment prior to construction? No, it didn't. BJ, no, the pipeline project did not go through or carry out an environmental impact assessment at all prior to construction. And that was one of the things that the Army Corps of Engineers needed to have in order for the permitting process. So it was backwards, and forgive my French, but it's ass backwards. They constructed, they started pushing the oil through prior to even having a permit and an environmental impact assessment. So you're no, the answer is no, it did not carry out the assessment. Good question, BJ. Thanks. And that's one of the things we're letting Biden know, is that it hasn't fulfilled its permitting process of the Army Corps of Engineers permitting process. So that's exactly one of the things we're putting in front of Biden. Good question, BJ. Thank you.
Doug, we had one come in from Tara. She asked, aside from pipelines, what do you see as the most pressing water resources concerns for the tribe?
I would probably say right now it's water quality. Some of the things that we're facing is with the 106 EPA is testing our waters that are coming onto the river, onto our tribal lands, and then then leaving the tribal lands. We're figuring out some of the quality of that water. We see a lot of EPA rollbacks that are enabling for things like spraying of pesticides, for instance, or CAFOs or something, that are just really being eased back in our off the reservation that are coming onto the reservation. So having EPA help us in formulating our own environmental quality water codes. So that's one of the questions that I'm sorry, that's one of the things that we're doing right now, is just trying to protect the quality of the water, of the subsurface and the surface water that is off the reservation, coming onto the reservation, and then leaving the reservation. So I would talk about quality and water quantity and water rights, because a lot of times we're seeing that water rights of the tribes are being diminished every day by global warming, and what's happening in Colorado, what's happening in western South Dakota, what's happening in eastern North Dakota. And so what's happening is all these straws are being put into the river, and they're just pulling a lot of water out of the Missouri, and it's diminishing um, a lot of our water quantity. So we want to protect our that we're going to have enough water as a tribe in 200 years, for our people as well. So good question, and thanks. One more. There's another question I see. Are there funding mechanisms through which the Water Center or water science labs can work with you on water quality related activities? Yeah, I mean, like I said, we work with BIA and grants to help us with a lot of these activities. The Water Center and the Water Science Lab, I think, um, we can get together and find out what it is that tribes need, the vulnerabilities, doing studies of the tribal lands, and tribal, the resiliency again of tribes, and having some students, come in and work with the tribes. We're always looking for, like Miss Styles earlier, Crystals, she's really good people. She really helps us out with some good information that we still use to this day. So yeah, there's a lot that I think that the water science labs can help with the tribes with water activities. So especially quality. I think one of the things we're always looking at is how do we um BTEX coming down the Missouri River from a small leak. We know that real quick, and I'll just say this, is that Dakota Access Pipeline has a leak detection of 1%. Well, and anything under that, it's not detectable. Well, 1% of 500,000 barrels is like 5,000 barrels, and to think 5,000 barrels could be leaking and it won't be detected. Well, um to study the water quality around these subsurface or surface water around the pipeline, and that costs a lot of money. It's really expensive to test for water quality, subsurface and surface waters. So good question, and thank you for that.
Doug, there's a really good connected question from one of our students in the class, Matthew. He asked, what do you think the single most important thing non-native folks can do in order to support your cause and help to push these issues forward?
I would say have a open mind and an open heart and an understanding of who Native people really are. I'm faced with that question every day, living in Mobridge, South Dakota, being on a school board, which is non-native, and my native kids go to that. So when I'm at a board meeting with non-native parents, teachers, staff, faculty, as one of the only native parents of 5 native kids in this community, that's one of the questions I'm always asked. What can we do in order to understand what it is that Native Americans or Native people want us to work, and how do and how do we work together? Well, one of the things I always say is, well, if I was a German, would you ask me that same question? Or if I was if I was Norwegian, would you be asking me that question? So my answer is that just having an open heart and an open mind, and understanding that that Native Americans still practice their religious culture every day. And that isn't your, that's a lot of time isn't the, Presbyterian or Catholic or Catholicism or any other, it's a different way of how we pray every day. Every day that we pray, it's not the way of, like I said, others. It's protection. It's protection of the earth first. The land comes before us. And so I think just understanding that and asking questions, asking a lot of questions to Native Americans that that sometimes that won't take offense to some of the questions you're asking, and just having an open mind and an open heart, I think, was a way to um to understand that. A good question, very good question. Thank you for that one. Any other questions?
I just want to thank you, Doug. I saw the photos of your kids and the family behind you, but I didn't realize that you had 5 children. So I can appreciate your hectic schedule and working full time and having these weighty issues to deal with. So thanks for taking the time to be a part of our series.
Yeah, I'm a basketball coach for the 5th grade boys, and we have a big tournament coming up this weekend. And so at 5 o'clock in actually 30 minutes, I have to get ready and get to the basketball court for these 5th graders. I got 2 5th grade boys, so they're looking at what high post or a high screen and low post means. So I'm gonna be doing a couple of. I don't know if I could do that anymore. I told them I could screen, but I don't think I could pick and roll. So we'll see how that happens today at 5. But no, I really appreciate it, you guys, for having me on. I look forward to being in person. I look forward to having this again, but maybe this time in a different setting where there might be a PowerPoint and some pictures. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. I know I brought a lot of my own pictures. I know, like the treaty territories and stuff like that. So you get a better perspective when you look at maps, and when you look at pictures and stuff, you get a better sense of what I'm talking about. So again, I really appreciate everybody being on, and I appreciate you guys allowing me for this time to speak in front of all you wonderful students that are out there. And keep your head up, and if anything, ask questions of Native people. We're always willing to enjoy the company and let people know who we are.
Thanks for that. Thanks for those words, Doug. I'll just close the seminar. And actually, I should check in maybe with Jesse just to see if, Jesse, is there anything that you wanted to share before we wrap things up?
No, I just wanted to say thank you, Doug. I really appreciate it. I thought this is wonderful discussion and wonderful interaction here. So I greatly appreciate it. And I apologize for the other one that came in and tried to join the conversation. But again, thank you, Doug, and hopefully look forward to meeting you in person someday soon.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to remind people we have our next seminar on Wednesday, March 3rd. So that's at the same time, 3:30 p.m., same place on Zoom. And actually, this is a great segue from Doug's talk. We're going to have a seminar by Marty Matlock, who, Doug, you may know Marty or know of him. He's the executive director at University of Arkansas's Resiliency Center, but also the chair of the Cherokee Nation's Environmental Protection Commission. I think he'll have a fascinating talk and offer another indigenous perspective on natural resources and water. And just a reminder that you can catch the recording of the seminar on the Water Center's YouTube channel at youtube.com/Nebraska Water Center. So with that, I think I'll bring the seminar to a close and just say, get out there on a fast break, Doug.
Thank you guys very much. Everybody have a blessed day, and be good.